Welcome to Golden Mastermind Seminars Radio with your host, Jeffrey Combs.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jeffrey Combs, and this really is going to be a live. If you see right here, I'm in my whiteboard in one of my studios in my upstairs in my home at 989 Oxford Way, Stockton, California. So you are going to actually see me live performing right here on my whiteboard. And the topic for today's Facebook Live, Golden Mastermind Seminars podcast, Matt Smith, good to see you. It's going to be the psychology of self-worth. Matt Smith, good to see you, my brother. So Matt, go ahead and post how many times you've seen me speak. So Matt, this will bring you back to the days in Philadelphia and in New Jersey and the other places. Matt, along with Josh Waxman, has seen me speak well over 50 times. So Matt, you've seen me wear this shirt at least 50 times. This is my favorite shirt. I've worn it around the world. So this is going to be unique today. It's something I'm experimenting with. Zarek, so I'm going to be doing more whiteboard training. So I'm going to do today's Facebook Live on the whiteboard right here today. And I'm going to cover the psychology of self-worth. So I'm actually in Blake Redmond's office. Blake is sitting right over there in front of his computer. We got our studio set up here in front of a 4x6 whiteboard. So any of those of you who ever saw me speak live, I am the master of the whiteboard. And if you've seen Josh Waxman speak, Josh saw me speak in front of the whiteboard many times. So Josh, I just want to thank you for bringing your team. Josh, what I'm going to do here today is an experiment. So if you can see Josh, I'm in my seminar attire from the old days. The blue, I'll have Blake take a picture. But Blake, can you take this off the tripod for just a minute, stand back and show him? I want Josh and his team to see that I'm in the seminar outfit that I routinely speak in. So what you're actually seeing, okay, that's good. So what you're seeing is you're going to see a live seminar. You're going to see me do a live seminar here. Bring it on up a little closer. You're going to see me do live content today on the whiteboard. So if you follow Josh Waxman, he is one of my top 5 all-time students. Now, when I say top 5, that encompasses over 10,000 clients that I've coached. That's Susan Sly, that is Chad Wade. I mean, there's a laundry list of people I've coached who are multi-millionaires, and Josh is one of the top 5 clients that I've ever coached. And Josh saw me speak over 50 times on a whiteboard, and Matt Smith, who's also on today's Facebook Live, has seen me speak on that whiteboard over 50 times, primarily in New Jersey, Philadelphia, Long Island, New York, multiple places on the East Coast, Delaware, and other places. So I'm going to cover content just like I would in a live event. So here's the topic for today's Facebook Live. I'm going to hand this to Blake. It's called the psychology of self-worth. Put this right here for me, Blake. And then if you receive my email and you're not on my email list, go ahead and go to my website, goldenmastermind.com, and you can sign up for my email list. Now I'm going to move into the inspirational portion of today's Facebook Live as Blake is adjusting the fine tuning here.
Josh said it's on mirror. See if we can reverse it.
Okay, so in mirror, we're in the process of reversing. What does that even mean?
So see how the words show up on the...
Okay, see if you can do whatever you can do. We're getting closer. So whatever we're doing, we're going to figure it out. But in the interim, I'm going to speak while Blake is manning the situation. Because what you learn to do is you never focus on a problem, you always focus on a solution. So what I'm going to cover for you today is the psychology of self-worth, and I'm going to use my whiteboard here just as soon as we have this figured out. So today's content, self-worth, is also esteem. Self-esteem is how I feel about self. So self, there's two selves. There's going to be the higher self and the lower self. And so on the map of the scale of consciousness, your lower self is the self that lives in anxiety, fear, and doubt, driven by a series of emotions. And those emotions that you will experience in your lower self are the emotions of fight or flight. These are the emotions of fear. These are the emotions of worry. These are the emotions that keep us doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, but recreating the same situation to fulfill the neurochemical craving of being emotionally addicted to the same set of feelings, and that is called the payoff. Now, the payoff is a very unique situation that a large percent of the population creates to fulfill a neurochemical feeling. So bear with me. So if the words right now are backwards, bear with me. It will challenge you, the listener, to understand this as we are figuring this out in the moment. This is an impromptu Facebook Live. So thank you very much for your patience. So the term the payoff is one of the most challenging situations for the average person to understand, because most of the population recreates it over and over, and then they live in their analytical, egoic mind, trying to figure it out, rationalize it, do the same thing over and over, not really understanding the process of letting go. Letting go is the ability to separate your feelings from the events that shape them, so that you're not in fight or flight, so that you're in much higher emotional vibration, so that your energy is transmuting love, joy, bliss, and enlightenment. And in that state of letting go, you're now opening yourself up to the possibility. When you're in anxiety, fear, and doubt, you're in the probability of recreating the same situation to fulfill the same set of feelings. And if that is what you're experiencing, then you're going to attract your reality, the same perpetrators, the same violators, in the same situation to fulfill the same feelings. Your self-worth is how I feel about self. So if you ever read the book by Dr. Joe Dispenza, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, he has a term he calls, and I call it also, it's called the gap. The G-A-P. So the gap. It's unique, isn't it? It's backwards for a moment. So this will challenge you, the watcher, to figure this out. So the gap is the space between the fact and fiction. So the facts are you have low self-esteem, and the fiction is you keep holding on to the story about the future that hasn't happened to recreate the same situation to fulfill the same set of feelings. When you are no longer the mind-body connection to the events that shape the feelings, then you are you, and you are letting go. And you are letting go in a relaxed body. But the body that you hold on to now is the body that keeps you in anxiety, fear, and doubt. The skill of letting go is a specific skill where you are able to use a breath cycle to interrupt a feeling that you go into fight or flight. Fight or flight is the automatic reaction to stimulus that keeps you doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result.
We can either end the live and start over with a different mirror, or we can switch to the back camera and see if that works.
Okay, switch to the back camera. We're doing a little
live testing here.
Live testing here as we're in our studio experiencing this situation. But the show must go on, and as the show must go on, a skilled performer does not let outside circumstances or influences affect the performance. And so this is what you're going to have to be able to do. You're going to have to be able to address the ego that wants to melt down while staying in the present moment, being completely aware. So I'm going to cover this right now. The gap. Can you see that, Blake?
Yep, we're good.
All right, so we're good. So, hi everyone, this is good. All right, so I'm going to cover the gap for you today. So here's what the gap looks like. The gap in higher consciousness. So this is higher consciousness. This is lower consciousness. And this is right here called the gap. So this is lower consciousness. And in lower consciousness, what you have is anxiety, fear, and doubt. And in anxiety, fear, and doubt, what you have is anger, hate, resentment, guilt, shame, abandonment, rejection, overwhelmed feelings, grief, apathy, and pride. This is the neurological network of neurons that wire and fire that form your feelings. And these feelings of not being good enough create low self-worth. In the psychology or the science of self-worth, here's where you want to be able to vibrate from. Your vibrational energy, the most grounded place that you can vibrate your energy from is this place right here called love. Now, this becomes a challenge if you grew up and you weren't loved. If you weren't loved. If you weren't loved and you were violated, traumatized, lived in an alcoholic home, and are the adult child of narcissistic parents, any of these situations, or singled out in the playground or any multitude of other situations, then you will have challenges with your self-worth. And then in that self-worth, as you carry on through life, as you enter into the medical system, the school system, and the school system will continue to take you to this place called your left brain. The school system understands the educational platform, the medical platform, the pharmaceutical platform. Their objective is to keep you in a place right here in your left brain, in low consciousness. So this is high consciousness, this is low consciousness. The educational platform and all the platforms, their purpose is to keep you right here, and that is called thinking. And typically what you think is you think about what you feel, and when you don't feel good enough, then that is what you cast. So your vision that you're casting a vision. It starts off as a thought. So thoughts are things. You may have heard of that. Well, actually, a thought has a chemical response. But once the thought leaves the body, it's then called a thought form. Now, once it becomes a form, and it comes from this part of your brain, from your left brain, now it's out here. Now it's out here, and it's right out in here. And this thought that was a thought that now became a form, now your attractor factor is going to attract your reality, people and situations to fulfill the feelings. So when it leaves here, then it goes up here in what's called the quantum field. And within the quantum field is what's called the Akashic Records. The Akashic Records is a storehouse of knowledge of all content that's ever been created. And you have access to it when you're using this part of your brain. That's your right brain. That's your limbic brain. That's the brain of intuition. That's the brain of trust. That's the brain of love, joy, bliss, enlightenment, knowing, understanding, awareness. And this all connects in higher consciousness. So the brain that's in love, that's in joy, that's in bliss, that loves who you're being, what you're creating, your innovativeness. But the brain that's in force, the brain that doesn't want to sell anything, the brain that wants to rebel, the brain that smokes marijuana, vapes, uses alcohol, food to stuff feelings, that brain is your thinking brain. And that brain creates a lot of pressure on yourself. So this is when this brain also creates brain fog. This brain creates a brain that procrastinates and avoids. And this is why it's so important to understand what letting go means. So for those of you who have not followed me or don't understand the skill of letting go, Blake, can you just look on right here and see where I am on the whiteboard? So I want to write right here. Where am I lined up to write? Right there? Okay, so letting go is a specific skill. And it's a specific skill, and it requires mastery, and you have the ability to master it. Because you have the ability to master your emotions. And once you understand this, and you buy into this principle, and then this principle becomes a belief. Then when it becomes a belief, it becomes a thought that becomes a form. And once you grasp with the thought, with the creation, from thought to form, that's when you start to change who and what you attract. Because who and what you attract comes from this. It comes from inspiration. It comes from joy. It comes from bliss. It comes from this part of your jaw. If your right hand is right here, it's the grit. It comes from right up in here in this part of your neck. This is your atlas, your axis. This is where you're either in control or you're letting go of control. When you're flexible, you have rotation in your neck. When you're inflexible, your neck subluxates. This is why you have a neck ache. This is why your neck goes out of place. You can go to bed at night and wake up with a neck ache, a back ache, even though you didn't get injured. It's because you took your problems to rest with you. But instead of resting, what you did was toss and turn. And in that toss and turn situation, you are carrying your problems into your rest with you. But once you begin to let go, it's a magical experience. Because once you're letting go of the feelings that you've carried for years. You're letting go of the 10-foot grandfather clock that you've drug around with you your entire life. Once you start letting go, you're in the separation between the feelings and the events that shape them. I'll say this slow. You're separating your feelings from the events that shape them. So most of the feelings that people carry with them is they carry this feeling, which is actually called overwhelm. They carry the feelings of being overwhelmed with them throughout life. This is the 10-foot grandfather clock that most people carry with them. They carry this grandfather clock and they strap it on their wrist. And they drag this around with them their entire life. And it goes like this, and it keeps going further and further down the map of consciousness, all the way down to grief and pride. Grief, apathy, and pride. And that's where most of the planet resides, is in grief, apathy, and pride. And this is where, if you're building a business or selling products, services, benefits, and features, this is why a lot of people don't buy, because number one, you're projecting your own anxiety onto them. You're not comfortable with what you're selling or who you are. You're in traumatic relationships. You're dragging around your addictions. You're silently vaping in the closet. You're stuffing your feelings with food in the refrigerator while by exercising in the morning but binging at night because of the feelings you hold on to. You're silently using other illicit drugs and other situations to mask your low self-esteem, your low self-worth. And I was a master at it once. I was an addict for 14 years. 14 years. My drugs of choice were alcohol, drugs, sex, compulsive debting, dysfunctional relationships, and I ran the table on those for 14 years until I hit a rock bottom. At December 17th, I had my last drink in 1988. But that doesn't mean that everything was awesome on the next day. It's been a 37-year vigil, a 37-year odyssey of sobriety, which then manifested into emotional sobriety. I thought it was a great victory to be clean and sober, but what I found out that I was, in the first 10 years of my sobriety, is I was what is called a dry drunk. Now, I was practicing spirituality, and I was going to meetings, and I was in a network marketing business, but I was definitely not succeeding in business. I ended up $100,000 in credit card debt after 8 years of free enterprise. That was the sum total of what I had to show for, and I was living in an apartment that cost $600, and I was driving a purple Honda Accord. This was me in my first 8 to 10 years of free enterprise business in sobriety. This is what I accrued. However, that was the liability side. On the asset side, I had 8 years sobriety. I had been in free enterprise all 8 years. And I had read hundreds of books and attended hundreds of meetings. So these were intangible assets. They didn't show up in the bank account. They didn't show up any assets. I didn't own any property. I was just barely getting by. However, I was creating what you're creating right now, many of you are, and it's called this. It's called the compounded effect. And the compounded effect is where you are right today. If you're watching this content and you're in Josh Waxman's team, or if you're watching this content and you've been following me for years, and you've been reading the books, you've been going to the seminars, the workshops, the events, here's what I'll tell you right now. They all count. It all counts. It's all part of this. It's all part of your compounded effect. Now, that doesn't mean that you deserve instant results or that you're going to achieve any wealth or any status overnight, but what it does mean, it means you're in the game. And if you're in the game, you are in a place called possibility. However, there's a quantum leap that goes from possibility to probability to definite to certain. I'll show you what that is. This is the map of the scale of consciousness. Right here, this is called the gap. This is called the lower self, and this is the higher self. This is where every one of you are right here. If you're watching this, you're at least right here. Your objective is to go from here up into here. So your emotional vibration right here is 200 cycles per second. That means you're vibrating and transmuting energy at 200 cycles a second through power of association, through the books you read, through the person you're in the process of becoming. But the quantum leap you seek is a different level of emotional energy. And it comes from a level of belief that only you can manifest that belief. And that's called a sense of certainty. Now, this is a place that only you have the ability to access. And no one can exactly break it down for you. I mean, I can break it down for you, but it's going to be your responsibility to interpret, understand. That's the content, but it's your responsibility to put it in an application. That's the context. So that's content, context. And right now, I'm going to write down these words for you so that these are words that you can eliminate today. These are the most important words that you take out of your vocabulary today. That makes sense. This is what most of the planet says, and every time you say that, you go right down in here. Because that takes you right to your left brain. The more that you understand that your creativity, your intuition, your innovativeness, your ability to create on command comes from inspiration. It comes from inspiration. It comes from perspiration. It comes from love. It comes from joy. It comes from bliss. It comes from sweating under your arm because your body is releasing. And what your body begins to release in this state of the brain is called gamma. When you're in gamma, you're virtually like this. You're in a surrender state. I already went outside and stood in the grass today with a staff. I turned north, south, east, west. I did a complete pirouette, looked up to God and surrendered. I had a unique phone call from a prospect. I went outside and gave it up, surrendered, breathed, released, and let go, and got back into my body in a gamma brainwave state. Now in the gamma brainwave state, you're releasing a neurochemical called DMT. It means dimethyltryptamine. And that is your objective, is to be in that state 7 days a week, as much as possible. Because that state is joy, that's bliss, that's enlightenment. And you're not in conflict, you're not in force, you're not in procrastination, you're not in avoidance. And if you're in challenging relationships, that's your responsibility to find the sweet spot in the challenge of life, and that is called non-attachment. So in a non-attached state, it means exactly what it means. It means you are not attached. It means there's a separation right here, there's a gap, so that you realize that you are not responsible for other people's feelings and actions. You are fully responsible for yours, and you're letting go of the guilt associated with being in your power. One of the reasons that you'll have the most challenging components of being successful in your own journey is this right here. These are two key words that will assist you as I begin to wrap up today. These are two very low transmutational words that are feelings. They go from thought to form, and that is guilt and shame. When you live in guilt, when you're too guilty to close a sale, when you're too guilty to receive a compliment, when you're too guilty to leave a relationship, when you're too guilty to quit a job, when you're too guilty because you're worried about how other people are feeling, you have given your power away. You have no power. What you have is low self-esteem, and you have no self-worth. It means that you will not let go of the trauma bonds that you hold on to because of this right here. It's because you are living in what is called the payoff. Now, for those of you watching this today, this is a very unique opportunity because you're actually watching me do this live. The only other times I'm going to do this live is at my 2 events that I host a year. I did this for years. I would cover this content, the payoff. But you're watching it right here today. This moment right here, understanding this right here, can absolutely change your life. Because what it means is that you come to a conclusion, you come to a realization, you come to that fork in the road, you come to that realization that you're in situations that are disempowering to you, and you actually have the courage, you have the intestinal fortitude, you have the will, you have the commitment, you have the truth, you have the trust, you have the awareness, you have the understanding, you have the consciousness to create a decision that will impact your life. And that decision will impact your life is a decision that you haven't had the courage to create. Once you step across the bridge and create that courage, you will not go back. It's when you say, I will never work for another person again, you don't. When you say, I will never have another drink again, and you mean it and you commit to it with conviction, it happens. And once that happens, you begin to change the energy that transmutes and permeates from your body. You begin to transcend from a whole different level of love and joy and bliss. And this is when people show up. The parking space is available. I went to dinner Saturday night. The parking space was right in front of the restaurant in a very packed parking lot at a restaurant that I've dined at least 50 times. And when I say the parking space was in front of the door, I mean the parking space was in front of the door because that always happens to me. Because I believe it. And I manifest that before it happens. I don't sit down and meditate. I know it. And once you live in that know state and get out of the analytically egoic mind that thinks, processes, rationalizes, and gets ready to get ready, you are no longer the mind-body connection to the events that shape the feelings. So I'm also going to offer a unique marketing proposition today, a UMP. This is called the Unique Marketing Proposition. Now what I do, I create products. I used to create CDs. I have downloads. I write content 7 days a week. But what I do is I am a coach. I've been a coach for 27 plus years, approaching 28 years in September. That will be my anniversary, my 28th year. So that's 2 plus 0, that's 28 years. So that is 10, which is 1, breaks down to the number of 1. 1 is not the loneliest number. 1 is the beginning number in the numerology code. So it's a very, if you know what that means, it's a very unique year for me as I cross into that 28th year of my career. If you are seeking one-on-one coaching, if you have the courage to reach out to me and request a free 20-minute coaching call, if you have the access or the resources, if you have the courage to find and access the resources, if the pain is great enough and you're ready to cross that bridge, if you're a former client, an existing client, or brand new watching my content, I offer free coaching sessions to evaluate where you are. If you're an existing client or former client, contact me about I'm going to offer a lifetime coaching contract at some point this year. You can ask me about it today. It'll be a set fee where I'll be your coach for the rest of your life. I want to reserve that for 10 people. I've already sold 2 of them. I reserve that for 8 more people. So if you want to find out more about that, reach out to me. In the present, if you want to find out more about my one-on-one coaching, go to my website, goldenmastermind.com, or you can contact me right here, 209-649-1562. Jeffery Combs, President and Founder, Golden Mastermind Centers Incorporated. You have an outstanding afternoon.